Hello everybody, this is episode number 5 of the live stream, and I'm having sweaty hands. As you can see, I'm wearing a short sleeve t-shirt today. It's pretty hot here in the room. Germany has actually nice weather now, but for video, yeah, feels a bit glibbery. Thank you very much for voting for this song, which was the song My House is Green from my Soul and Pepper album. And that's maybe the title track. No, it's not even the title track. It's yeah, My House is Green is number 2 on this one. Anyway, the new thing I do have the backing tracks of this song now on our web store. So if you go to www.shop.bluguitar.com, you can download the backing track for this song and also get the CDs. Yeah, so this is something nice here. Let's talk a bit about the gear and maybe a little thing about the song I wanted to let you know. That song is always good to start a gig. And I found something like when I open a concert, it's good to have a song that has a good groove. You know, when you have such a moody intro, the whole atmosphere is like a different vibe, and you know, I kind of like to open up with something that is groovy and happy and makes you feel good. And this song, My House is Green, is that kind of opening tune. And in my other band, the Rock Anarchy, I like to have something with a similar groove, which is my version of Hey Joe of Jimi Hendrix, in a version that has a superstitious feel. Okay, I'll get rid of the reverb and the delay here. What I find interesting in this song is the phrasing kind of thing. You know, I've seen a few covers of that song on YouTube, and thank you for doing that. For me, it's big fun to see other people play my songs. In this song, the groove is the main thing on this song, and the groove is already in the melody. It's the, yeah, the groove is the main thing, and you have to feel the triplets. So this is the important thing about that song. And of course, there are a few tricky bits and pieces, which I actually missed out too. Yeah, anyway. Okay, that's the song. Today, I'd like to talk a bit about the BluBOX and the general setup of an AMP1 pedalboard. And as you can see, I have everything super simple today. The only thing I have is the AMP1, an echo pedal, and the BluBOX. And that's all there is. And that's already my tone. So I didn't switch anything. I just had the delay on, and this is off. The rest is reverb. So with a little delay, I think it blends better in the music if you can afford it. Unless you have a real dry, funky band, and delay is. Delay is great for soloing, and it's great to have the guitar like surfing on top of the mix. But here, you know, when you look at my settings, I use the vintage channel, I use the gain on full, I use the master somewhere in the middle. The master itself doesn't make any sound. And the tone controls, bass, middle, treble, it's 5, 5, and the treble is maybe 4 or almost 5. So it's kind of nothing special. That's all there is. And this goes directly into the BluBOX. And I'm using the Stack 170 cabinet, which is like my favorite cabinet that I have been using on most of my records so far. It is a greenback cabinet, but loaded with 55 Hertz resonance bass speakers. And it sounds super nice, big and warm. And if I show you how, you know, my tone works, is the volume control on the guitar is everything. As I told you in the other episodes, I'm using the treble bleed to enhance the range of clean sounds when I go on low settings, like this. Yeah, and that tone is simply AMP1 and a little pedal delay and some reverb, and using the boost on. Without the boost, I get a woodier tone, but I don't get this sparkling high ends when I have the volume down. So this is like with the boost on, and the boost is put to maximum on the side. No boost. It's a more regular, dry guitar tone. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not 100% my tone. I want that extra silver. And now I reduce a bit more. And then when I increase the volume, hey, this is everything. Yeah, so this is how my tone worked in the past and now in the present with AMP1. In the past, I've done the same thing with a Plexi Marshall cranked and having a little boost in front of that. The same guitar. I play this guitar since I was 17. And in the mix, I use some delay and that's it. And that's my foundation that I want and need for my tone. So, and what's important to me is also, besides the amp and how I get all these, you know, range and characterful in-between sounds, from clean to overdrive, from slight overdriven sounds to raunchy and smoky and whatever you call it, those, all these nice nuances here, is all on tap on my volume guitar. The cabinet is so important. So what we have done is we hooked up the BluBOX and we hooked up the original cabinet that is been modeled, so to speak, into the BluBOX in the other room. Maybe we can show the picture of the setup from yesterday. And it's mic'd up. It's mic'd up with a Shure SM7, which is the big brother of the SM57. So it's a dynamic microphone, but with a bigger membrane, because I like the bass. I like the big, warm tone. So, can we switch for the mic'd sound? So this is the original cabinet. Sounds nice. Now back to the BluBOX. just to prove you that we are on the BluBOX, I switched a few cabinets. So I personally think the BluBOX even sounds better. How comes? Well, I used a couple of different microphones when I did the IRs of my beloved cabinet. I used the Shure, the big one, and I used the 57, and then I blended different impulse responses from the same speaker together to get like my ideal picture of how I hear the cabinet. So it would take a lot of time to go back to get to the same quality that I captured for the BluBOX. You know, yesterday we simply put a cabinet up and put a speaker in front, a microphone in front of the speaker, and placed it where you normally would place a microphone, and which sounds pretty good. But when I did the sound for the BluBOX, I had more time. I spent a lot of time with different microphones and then blending all these levels together to have a perfect sound of that cabinet. So, and of course, it was my personal cabinet that I love so much, and this is my personal preference of microphones that I use, and it's my tone. This is how I listen to my cabinets. There are other great impulse loader products on the market, and there are some other great impulse responses, but these are not my tones. And on the other hand, the BluBOX is the simplest IR loader there is. It's one of the first ones, if not the first one. The technology has been around for decades. So I didn't invent the technology. I used this on my laptop even 15 years ago when I did some recordings in Australia on the balcony, and I had no cabinet. But now I use, you know, all the collections of my cabinet, which is the cabinets that I bought as a studio musician, and these cabinets gave me the best tone in a studio situation, because in the studio, sound matters. Basically, it's sound, timing, and ideas. And if you have a great tone, if you have a great sound, that's your starting point. And so I bought my great, whatever, mix 60s, 80, 30, you've seen the other day, and my Fender M's, you know, and tons of Marshalls and tons of other cabinets, and my beloved Tweed 112, which is a 57 Fender Tweed Deluxe original Fender combo, and so on. The difference, here's a question I see from Guitar Guru. What makes the BluBOX different than the other cabinet sims out there? There's like Torpedo. Hello, the guys. Guillaume is my friend from Torpedo, a French guy. We meet a lot in the industry. So, you know, this is a very small industry. We all talk to each other. I know the guy who designed the aux for 10 years already, Universal Audio, and I know Guillaume from Two Notes, who designed the Torpedo. So, you know, the BluBOX is the easiest of them all. There's simply a speaker level input, there's a line level input. This is all it takes. There's only a switch that, you know, makes the range of level there, and there's not even a control. And you have two outputs. One is a balanced, which is important to me, microphone level output. So this is like what you give to the guy at the front of house on the live situation or in the studio. It's like a microphone. And since it's using a transformer, you even have this element of a transformer. And, you know, there's a coil and there's something about speakers and a transformer. This transformer even makes such a tiny little bit extra sound. I love that. And of course, it's designed to be hum-free, and it has a ground lift. So for me, being a gigging musician in a live situation, I need something that simply works. Plug it in, needs to work. No parameters, no worries about is this the right one. So that's why I designed the BluBOX as simple as can be. And then we have a little clip LED here, which is now green. And this can even turn into red, like this. Ah, sorry, this was delay. I wanted to change the master volume back. It doesn't sound bad if it turns to red. So what happens is the BluBOX itself has kind of a analog soft clip, or it's an analog circuitry that does a little bit of compression and a very subtle overdrive. And that's something that a speaker also does. When you drive a speaker hard, the speaker by nature cannot get any louder. So it starts to compress, and then it starts to bark, rah, 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 different frequencies from when you play it at lower volume. And this kind of behavior or effects is also inside the BluBOX. It is something that is already a little bit dynamic. I know that some people heard me talking about dynamic IRs, which is the next big thing for the AMP1. And dynamic IRs is taking this approach to, well, kind of the next level. But this already is dynamic. So yeah, it's just the easiest way to get there. Okay, talking about different cabinets in there. You know, I'm a Marshall 4x12 player all my life. And this is why I love this vintagey sound the best. I give you... So that's my personal favorite. I go back for the other one, the 67, which is... Compare. Hey, it's still a great sounding cabinet. It has a different mid-range. Well, to me it sounds more like Ritchie, and it sounds more like a lot of classic rock sounds. The 70 is my personal choice, and this is a cabinet that is a Marshall cabinet, but it's taken from a bass stack, so the low end is a bit bigger, and I love that. And so this is the first one, the 65 with Alnico speakers. Well, when I play it, it always sounds the same. But this is Jennifer Batten's favorite. She plays it with a little bit more high end. And of course she has humbucker pickups, but... That's the stack 1971. You should definitely have a humbucker guitar for that, and I think these are the speakers that most Scorpions albums are recorded with. Like. I had the mic position, which gives you a blend between the center, which is brighter, and the edge, which is smoother. But let's go for the Stack 1980. That's another big classic. It's the one with the 75 watt Celestion speakers. And that's another great cabinet. Well, they are all great for certain things. I show you there's some metal sounds. The Tweed 112. Okay, when I use the same settings, like ouch, there's something nasty in the mid-range, but that comes very handy when you go for clean sounds. I love this for the blues tones. This is the one Princeton, Fender and Princeton. Man, I got so many amps and I forgot all the names. The Princeton has a bit of scoop mids, as you can. Back to the Tweed 112. So this is just changing the speaker cabinet and you get a completely different tone. That's something, well, why people play different Fender amps. It is more the speaker than the amp. If you look at vintage Fender amps, if you actually unplug the electronics from the speaker, and then you will find out there's like very similar electronics from a super reverb to all of them. They have more power, they have slightly different frequencies, but I think a lot of the different sounds in those vintage Fender amps is the speakers. So speaker, very important. This is the a twin, which is a big and in your face and very loud. And the 2x12 also features that. Let me give it. So there is no like scoop mids or anything on the twin, I believe. 210, 410 super reverb. Yeah, this is the Vox AC30 cabinet, our nano cab, fat cab, blah blah blah. So 16 cabinets, and I go back for my favorite. Now you listen to the same setting, but with my favorite cabinet again. And now I get the full gain for my stereo. Here's my tone. So this is yeah, how I use the BluBOX. Here's one little thing I'd like to do, which is I show you the difference of having a speaker connected to the BluBOX and having no load at all. So for me, I can simply unplug the speaker load, and now I have to reduce the volume a little bit. I explained this. This is the current feedback effect with the speaker. I will explain this in a second. But this is like AMP1, no load, simply speaker out, speaker level input, and this is what you get. You hear this sound and it's already killer. If I plug this back in, oops, okay, I have to change the volume. There is a little bit more magic. What is this? I did bring some papers. Where is this? Somebody sees my speaker diagrams. Is it maybe underneath here? Okay, anyway. Something over here. I have to explain. Okay, a speaker has a frequency curve, and the frequency curve is what is making the sound. Okay, but on the other hand, it has an impedance curve, and the impedance curve, where is it? I thought I brought it up. Maybe it's still downstairs. Somebody is looking for it. Okay, the impedance curve is something like, you can see there's something around 100 Hertz, and this 100 Hertz bump is there, and there comes like a dip, and there's increasing impedance again for the higher frequencies. And this impedance is the load for the power amp. And the power amp kind of interacts with this load. And the load is different for the different frequencies. Yeah, and here we go. Maybe I forgot somewhere. So this is the frequencies curve of the speaker. And it shows you, this is the bass, a little bass, and the mids with all the little hums. And then there's like a kind of peak on this particular speaker. 4.6 kilohertz is a typical Marshall sound thing here. And then there's a roll off for the high end, otherwise it would be too much electrical noise and harsh. So this is the frequency curve. And this here is the impedance of the speaker in the frequency spectrum. So you see this is the 100 Hertz and it's slightly below 100. And this is where the bass is happening. And this is what's so important for me as a rock player, because this kind of is the punch that I get from the interaction of the power amp with the speaker. And then you can see the impedance goes up in the higher frequency range. And basically you can think of this curve similar to a little bit like an EQ, which is dynamic. So all I'm saying is, if you have a load that is not compensated, like a dummy load or nothing connected like this, it would be simply flat. As I know all that, I have already built in a compensation that kind of builds something like that into the BluBox when no speaker is connected, okay? But a real speaker has still, you know, a little bit more. So this is both curves in one diagram. So you can see in the frequency range how important that is. And this also comes from the housing. And then this is, well, this is where the 4x12 has the chuck and all that stuff. Cool. So what I'm saying here is you get killer results with no speaker connected. This is how we recorded all the episodes so far. And since we have the AB switch here for this episode, where we showed the mic'd up 4x12, this is the real cabinet. And on this real cabinet, I get this real impedance curve. And now you could hear, there's a tiny little bit magic difference from the simulation of it to the real deal. So my advice for you guys is, if you can afford to have a speaker connected to it, simply have the speaker connected, because it makes the sound even better. If you have to do it silent recording, well, then it works with AMP1. If you have a standard tube amp, you need a load. It could also be one of those load boxes. And but the real deal is the real deal, okay? So this is how good it gets. I made another experience the other day with the BluBox on my pedalboard in a live situation, and I will never forget, because I was the guy who does the front of house sound. He was sick, and so we couldn't do a sound check. So I had my wireless system connected to the guitar, to my amp, and I went in on the mixing console. I know how to dial in tones on the mixing console, as well as I mixed most of my albums together with some other engineers, but I know what's going on. And I mixed some stuff in my life as well. So I know how to dial in bass drum sounds and bass sounds and snare drum sounds and vocal sounds and all that stuff, and guitar sounds. So I was shocked when I was A-Bing the mic'd up cabinet that I had on the stage versus the BluBox. I will never play a mic'd up cabinet in a live situation again, because what I getting out of this output here was simply amazing, mind-blowing to me. This was my tone, like we hear it now, and the load was my stage cabinet, which is the fat cap. So I had a nice tone on stage with my fat cap. I had a perfect load for my IR sound coming from the BluBox. So that's basically how I use the BluBox. And the concept of the BluBox is set and forget. You know, it's a device that gives you instant access to great sounds, and only two knobs. One is which cabinet, and then a little bit of sound, so to speak. That's basically the BluBox. I would be ready for a few questions. Can we start? What is hi Thomas. In a silent recording situation with AMP1 connected to monitors, I find the fan a bit annoying. Oh, the fan, yeah. Is there a way to silence it? I assume not much heat is generated this situation. Well, AMP1 has a fan built in, yes. And the fan is always on on a low speed. And when AMP1 is getting really hot, just because I cranked the amp, it will speed up, and then of course you will hear the fan. There's not that much you can do. For me, it's totally acceptable, but I'm more the stage guy than the studio guy, I have to admit. In the stage situation, I've never heard any fan at all. Okay, Russell Sauna, can you drop a pointer into the following follow-up to ways that you set up your guitar for smoothest playing while being able to get gritty and beat on it a bit? If you don't have a quick video, I'd watch it. Okay, that's a different story again. This goes into a totally different territory. Just talking about guitars, for smoothest playing, I mean, the height of the strings make a huge difference. On the other hand, it's also important to have like a good action, but it's also important to have not too low action, because if the action is too low, the tone is not big, and if the action is too high, you have simply to fight too much. This guitar I have since I was 17, so I modded everything to death, like every fret and everything here is kind of, you know, if something annoyed me, I changed it, I modified it. But what I learned is, yeah, you need to have the right action. I'm not familiar with the mills, but I can slide my pick underneath the 12th fret here. And the other thing is I have something like a compound radius, which is vintage on the first half of the fretboard kind of, and that blends into a flatter radius here, because the vintage radius makes string bending a problem. The more you bend, the easier the strings will die, you know, like. But on this guitar, it's not a problem because I know all the hills and I kind of polished or sanded off the problem zones. So this guitar has been tweaked over all the years. Here is another question. Is the Powersoak actually in the amp? So you can also control the Powersoak from a MIDI controller. Sorry if I missed that from the video. I just not clear if to me soaking actually happens in the amp and remote ones. Okay. Powersoak. That's a difficult question. I use the word Powersoak because everybody understands what a Powersoak does in the old school world. The old school world were tube amps that were sounding great, but most of us liked them best when we cranked them. But when we cranked the power amps or the old amps, we had a lot of noise and we had this kind of beautiful breakup, mostly coming from the power amp stage. There's some compression, saturation going on in the vintage amps when they are cranked. And to make this sound usable at a lower volume setting, Tom Scholz made it popular, but this was the invention of the Powersoak, which kind of was a big resistor in the early days that simply was turning all the output power into heat and had a separate tap where the rest of it was going to the speaker. So with that kind of Powersoak, we could play those beautiful vintage amps in a situation that was more modern, because the vintage amps were designed to be clean and maybe even fill a full stadium with sound. But today we have PA systems and stuff, so this kind of volume is first not needed, and secondly it's a problem in most cases. So this is where the Powersoak comes from. Now for me, the Powersoak in the AMP1 world is something important, because I wanted to show that the AMP1 is not a simple whatever preamp with a Class D power amp. And the Class D power amp is something totally neutral that just makes a certain pedal sound, so to speak, louder. I wanted to show that our power amp is doing the same, like those vintage all-tube power amps. And therefore, we came up with our unique and own special design that has all the parameters from a vintage design, like compression, saturation, zagging. And this is done in the combination of our nanotube with Class D. And we have the benefit of Class D, which means super low weight, no load needed, but we still have all the current feedback action and we have the saturation. And here comes the plus point on this. We can adjust these parameters with what we call the Powersoak. So we can set up if the AMP1 is like a 100-watt tube amp sound in the power amp stage, or if the AMP1 is like a 7-watt power amp. And it even goes lower for the home range, which is down to 500 or 150 milliwatts. The range from 7 watts to 100 watt is totally neutral. It's like a puristic design where the speaker and the power amp sees the speaker, there's no dampening. It's just like it's a 7-watt amp or it's a 100-watt amp, or you dial it in how many watts you want. So you can kind of surf on this break point. And that's the beauty why people love some vintage amps. This is some magic about there. A lot of people don't need that because they are a different style of players, especially modern guys like metal players. But me, being a vintage guy, I was fascinated about the zagging and the saturation of vintage amps. And this is why I love 100-watt Marshalls and 50-watt Marshalls and GTM 45s and you name it. You know, any kind of power range brings you to another so to speak, surfing point in the wave. And this can be adjusted via the Remote 1. But the Remote 1 is only the controller. The Remote 1 gives you only the information. Here's a Remote 1. Yep. So simply 1/4-inch jack into here, press Powersoak and dial in 100 watts. In the middle is kind of 7 watts and this is kind of 50 watts. And there's one thing that people sometimes complain about is like, I don't hear much difference. Well, that's very easy. If you play the master volume lower than kind of the Powersoak limit, you don't hear the effect. It's like surfing on the beginning of the wave, not on the edge. And this is where the breakup and the zagging is happening. So the master volume on the amp has to be at a certain volume so that the Powersoak actually does the effect that you want to hear. Okay, that's a bit tricky, but once you understand the principle, it's logical. You have a certain amount of power that you need, and then you can adjust this kind of breaker point. And this is how to get to Powersoak. And yes, all the electronics that is doing that is built inside the AMP1. And it can be controlled via the Remote 1 or with a MIDI controller. And yeah, so the magic is already in here. So, next question. Servus Thomas, does the line-in have precedence over the speaker? And okay, if you can't use both at the same time. Now this is a question back to the BluBOX. Actually, that's a super good question. Let me simply... I know it's either this one or the other one. I plug in here and then we know. Yes, this is what's happening. You are totally right. So this was the proof. When the line-in is used, it will not use the sound from the speaker. Okay, Jonas Diemer, how was the talkbox effect on the recording? Okay, this is going back to My House is Green, and the talkbox is actually here. The talkbox is this little fellow here. And a talkbox is like a PA driver for mids and highs. And here's a little capacitor that kind of cuts the bass. And that's it. I mean, this is all live. I don't know what happens. Maybe I blow up the whole building, but just for fun, see if I can get this to work. Oops. There's the sound. And now comes the dirty part. If you play too much of that tubey stuff, you probably have to see a dentist or get a brain surgery. This is... Yeah, so that's the talkbox, and that's the one. Take some breath. That's the one that I used on the recording, and also I used the same on the Live in Raalte recording. Yeah, you know, as a studio musician, you buy a lot of crazy gear and have fun with it. And here's the story. I remember when I was recording that, I think it was my girlfriend. She was cleaning the room and I was making all these funny noises. And she thought, you know, now he's totally mad. So, you know, stuff like that happens, being a musician. You know, nobody knows that sound, especially if you're not a guitar player. So this was the talkbox effect. Please let us know how the AMP-X is coming along. Yes, sure. AMP-X is our biggest project and we work hard. It's so complex. We want you to collect all the questions for AMP-X. So I make another episode just focusing on AMP-X. So we can talk about the concepts, the ideas. It's super flexible and we will start with the basic tones and effects. But we created a platform that is literally able to do anything. I am in the industry for decades, as you probably know. I was 20, let me think, about 22 maybe, when I joined the R&D team of Hughes & Kettner. And ever since I was thinking in terms of amplifiers, not only as a player, also as a product. And the X is kind of combines everything that I have seen in my life in a still usable format. I mean, you could make a wonder machine that makes everything and have something like a tube calculator like back in the 40s, 50s, where you have a whole building just to make something that you can do on your mobile phone today. But this is not usable. So the AMP-X is the compromise, or is the best out of the experience and the tonal stuff if it's analog, and of course the usability of today. I feel today we live in a magic time of usability. You know, when you look at cars and stuff, you know, I mean, 150 years ago we had horses and this was very natural way of transportation. And then we had ships and stuff, and then we had the cars, and now it's going another revolution. And look at phones, you know. When I grew up, we had phones where we had to dial, and you know, and then cables. Today I got everything in my mobile phone. I got my calculator in my mobile phone. I got sat-nav in my mobile phone. I can write emails. I can watch, and that's the age of usability. And I put the whole thing in my pocket. Here it is. And I use this kind of thing in America, in Germany, in France, wherever I go. I can do anything. I make photos, I make videos, and there it is. And that's the one aspect of today and AMP-X. And the other aspect is what I learned from the past, which is the sounds, which is the magic about the tone, which is the tube, my tube amp collection, my speaker collection, my pedals collection. And you know, it's easy to make a product that does just the top 5 of them. And that's it. And then we go home, and then you have to buy a new product. But we are creating a new platform that does it all. That's scary. It's so scary that sometimes I have to hit my head and think about it. Yes, we actually do that. It's crazy. So here's the deal. Please write to us. I think we have an email like YouTube at BluGuitar.com, and we will collect all your questions, and then we make a special episode just on the AMP-X. And of course, we keep you informed and see what IRs can do and what dynamic IRs are about and what other things are on the way to come. Which is still a long way, but every day, you know, a little bit further, and one day we will see the Holy Grail. A few more questions. Mr. Blug, how and where can I get your backing tracks? I love your music and want covering your tracks. Okay, well, now it's simple. The backing tracks are available from our shop website, www.shop.bluguitar.com. And we only have the 3 from this album up now, but I went to the files and gave the rest to my helping hand, Kai, and he's just about to upload the rest during this week or next week. So you will see more backing tracks on our shop very soon. Eduardo Thomas, hello, I love your pedal. Make one video playing your ASP guitar. Okay, that's the blue one. Where is it? Oh, it's not even here. It's yeah, I know where it is. It's in the gig bag over there. There's nothing wrong about the BluGuitar. The BluGuitar. Does he mean the BluGuitar? Which one was it? The ESP guitar. Yeah, the ESP guitar is a BluGuitar. It's not a BluGuitar, but it's a guitar that has the color blue. That's why I always think about the BluGuitar, meaning the ESP guitar. Yeah, me and that guitar is a special connection. It actually belongs to my friend Alex Byroth, who is the guitar player in Sinner and stuff. And it's fun to play it, but I'm more... yeah, let's see how this goes along. From Livestream, we have a couple of questions. Hi Thomas, love your playing style. Just wondering if you normally play a strat with the volume at maximum or if you roll it back a little. Yes, I do roll it back a little. I even roll it back a lot, which means this is on 4. This is on 3. This is on 6. This is on 7.5. And this is on 10. So I'm actually kind of touching that thing a lot, and I have to replace this more often than my frets. So this and the 5-way switch is the most used parts on my Stratocaster. Yeah, volume is everything to me. Okay, what's the difference between Master Volume and Powersoak? I think I answered this, or I tried to answer. Master Volume is how loud it is. And Powersoak means at which point I can reach the top of the power of the amp. So Powersoak dials in if the AMP1 is a 7-watt amp, is a 30-watt amp, 50-watt amp, it's continuous up to 100. So it's the point where you reach the limit of the amp, and where the point is the point where the power amp stage starts to saturate and does this effect. Think of a car, you know, it's like how many turns you have on your motor. And the other parameter is the actual speed. I mean, you can go for several gears and go with your motor, or the actual speed and the speed would be the volume, and the how many turns you do is kind of the Powersoak, and that's the feel that you get. Okay, Siggy Houseweird. Hi Thomas, if I want to make recordings from the recording out of the BluBOX, what kind of cable do I need? With mono clinker, is there no signal? With mono clinker, there is no signal. Maybe he is talking about BluBOX. Well, if I want to record from recording out of the BluBOX. No, BluBOX. What kind of cable do I need? Well, you need two cables. One cable is the speaker out to the speaker level in, and if there is no speaker connected, it doesn't matter if it's a real speaker cable, like now, or if it's just a patch cable. But that's only if there's no speaker connected. The moment you connect the speaker, you have to use a real speaker cable, because there's a lot of current and voltage going at the same time, and that needs a proper cable. That's the first cable. And the second cable is either the XLR microphone out here, which is just like a microphone cable, or you use the line out, which is a 1/4-inch cable. And any standard 1/4-inch cable will work. I've done it many times and it works. And these two actually can be used in parallel. So you can have this and that on at the same time. Solari. Okay, hi Thomas. Is there any chance of a BluGuitar rotary speaker pedal? You know that I have done another fellow. Is the cable long enough? Let me see. Oh no, these are vibes. And let me see here. This is all boxes from the past, which are also great. No, somewhere here I have a rotosphere. Is a rotosphere? Rotosphere? Well, I show you next time. There's more episodes to come. The Rotosphere is a nice pedal to emulate the Leslie effect. It's a rotary speaker in a pedal format that I designed with Hughes and Kettner, and it was my idea to have something like that. When we did this, I was totally crazy. It's like, hey, are you serious? What is a Leslie anyhow? But I was a fan of Beatles and I was a fan of Jimi Hendrix, and they all were using Leslie cabinets in the studio production. Oh, somebody got it? I grab it here. That's the beautiful Rotosphere pedal. And this thing is being used by my heroes. Jeff Beck is using it, and a lot of American guitar players. I think it's still the most alive rotary effect that you can buy in the pedal. It's huge, it's very big, it's heavy, it's heavier than my amp, but it sounds brilliant. It's a bit noisy, but if you have the drive full, you can actually use it and have fun with it. It's a great pedal. Let's put it that way. I know what it is, and one day we'll see something in the AMP1. It's on my wish list. I can't tell you the year and the month and the date, but it's on my wish list too. Okay, next question. Hi Thomas, I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on how a power amplifier affects tone and what does it bring, compression, saturation, EQ, etc. Well, actually I kind of talked about this earlier. In my studio days, I always spent a lot of time to dial in the tones at the sweet spot. And I found that I need to have the perfect, to max out the signal with the power amp. So I started at low volume and I started to crank, and I started to see where the sound gets too muddy and where the sound has the sweet spot. And I found it's always, for me, just below the maximum. I mean, there's a maximum that is a bit too ugly in most cases, and there's a beautiful sound when I'm in this 85 to 95% range. And then if I play the right notes, they kind of are extra compressed and extra dynamic in the way of musically dynamic with extra overtones, And this is what I learned, which is the beauty. And this is what I'm doing here with AMP1 as well. I mean, everything here is like cascading dynamic stages from the boost in front of the amp to the vintage channel itself, which has a very long dynamic range to do all my stuff, up to the power amp stage, and all these stages kind of interact, and they are all dynamic, and including the BluBOX and the speaker itself. So Okay. Next question here. Is the Powersoak actually in the amp? I answered this. Yes, it's in the amp. Next one. I think this is... we have to start here at the screen. I have to look at the screen. So the new questions are on the top. Have you tried the HK Black Spirit floor? Sure. Just curious. You know, this industry is so small that I played a Black Spirit even before it was official. I know my friends from using Kettner, and maybe some wouldn't like to hear that, but you know, I'm good friends with everybody, and yeah, so I played that one, and there's a few things that I like about it, but there's more things that I think we can do better. That's why I founded BluGuitar and went all the way. And hey, simply check products, make your own judgment. But yes, I played one, and I played a lot of amps. For me, it's about, you know, it's like some of the guys that go to restaurants and taste, that's a pretty nice sauce, and this, and some of the stuff, even if it's not great, makes me start to think, okay, nice idea, but let's see how I can improve that. You know, so it's always good to be aware what's on the market, what other brands are doing, and it's always great to chat with other people. And you know, it's all good, and the world is so small, and there's many products, and there's a place for every product. So, Thomas, can I use the BluBOX before my cabinet? I mean, to change the sound of my original cabinet. Well, it will never change the sound of your cabinet because this is a speaker level through. So the speaker signal from the amp goes into the BluBOX, and this socket here is hardwired to the next socket. So this is straight in, straight out to the cabinet. And the only thing what happening here is the BluBOX has a little tab to grab the signal, to model or to simulate those 16 different cabinets and provide that sound to the other side, which is then the microphone level or the line level output, or for the headphones. So this is not to change the sound of your real guitar speaker cabinet. I believe in the real character of a real guitar speaker. And of course it makes sense for the recording, as we could hear how much influence from a microphone we get and how much a speaker sounds different and blah, blah, blah. It's so many things, and get a great sound out here. But I still have one cabinet that I listen to, and that's the concept of the BluBOX, and I still believe in the concept. I still believe changing real cabinets for your stage use is going too far for me. I mean, if you want to go this route all the way, Kemper is doing something with kind of FR speakers, full range flat response speakers, and they model the whole thing, but I'm losing the reality for two reasons. It's one thing is, if I switch the speaker, everything changes, not only the amp, and this is something I found a bit critical in the band situation, not in a studio situation. In a studio situation, I can totally understand why using different cabinets, but for me as a live guy, being on stage, I prefer having a frequency kind of range and spectrum that I can grab with my guitar and that the sound guy can grab. If I switch to another speaker cabinet, not only by changing this here, it's doing a lot, especially for me as a player. So I don't want that as a player for me. That's my personal opinion. If you are in a different world, fair enough, your thing, but not my thing. Okay, so back to the question. No, the BluBOX will not change the sound of the speaker connected here, only for the recording out on this side. How many reps of Teflon tape do you fit for stiffness? Okay, this goes back to the guitar question. Maybe you can see on this guitar the white stuff that is close to the whammy bar. Okay, that thing is, or that material is the Teflon tape. Oh, I still got it here from some of the episodes. So this tape is pretty thin, and what I do is I simply cut up a piece like that and I wrap it around. I never counted it properly, but I guess it's like maximum 5 rounds. And what it does, I mean, this is super flexible, so it kind of goes into the little grooves of the whammy bar. It prevents touching metal from metal, and of course it makes the arm thicker and thereby nice and controlled stiff, you know. So, you know, if I do this now here, it's simply smooth and perfect in the range where I need it. And, you know, I can do a whammy which is totally soft and costs nothing. It's just a cheesy trick. Okay, hi Thomas, where are the two different master volumes in AMP1? Why are there two different master volumes in AMP1? Can we say that first master is for nanotube and the other one for class? Okay, how to combine them to use BluBOX efficiently? So the question is, we do have a master volume here on the big knob, and we do have a master volume on the overdrive. So this is the overall master of all the sounds. Everything that's coming in from the preamp section is coming to the power amp, and this is the power amp master. So this master is only for overdrive. You can see there's like little guidelines that show you these are the 3 different overdrive channels, and then it kind of goes to the gain and the master here is the volume level, the master volume level of the overdrive channels. And hereby I can define which volume I have compared to clean. So clean, I can have a loud clean and a very soft master overdrive, or I can have a super loud and a soft and anything in between. So that's what this master is for, and that master is not really affecting the tone. We have more volume controls for the individual channels on the side. There's another AMP1 I can show on the top camera. So here is the volume for the classic channel, and there is a volume for the modern channel. And so I can kind of deduct or increase the volume of these channels to match the volume level of the other overdrive channels. So with this layout, it is possible to have every channel usable for the purpose you want to use it, like rhythm or solo. If you need more volume on a specific channel, it's simply possible. Okay. On the remote one, which is our pedal here, there is this button here, which is master volume. And this master volume is like, I can deduct the volume by, I think 10 dB or something is enough to make the difference between a rhythm sound and a lead sound. And it's like a solo boost or a rhythm reduction. So this is what you can do on the remote one. And the remote one can be used in direct access mode, where you simply hit this button and recall the switches for clean channel, for classic channel, and the boost and stuff, just like separate channels. But if you're doing too much of that tap dance, like, oh, I want my clean channel with the boost and the reverb, and the next sound should be the vintage without the reverb and no boost, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to hit 3 buttons. You can make this programmable by simply dialing in what you like as setting, press and hit the store button, and bam, put it to one preset number. And then it's 1 footstep will simply recall that. That's the use of the remote one. Okay, so I think this is how far we got with the first setup, BluBOX. More question? No. Do we have? No. The last question here, Thomas. I love seeing you on Henning's channel. Aha, Henning Pauli, HP 42 Gift Street, yes. Along with other amp designers, and there. Is there a lot of mutual respect between you guys? Are you friends? Yes. And I thought the AMP1 compared well with boutique brands. Sure. Yeah, let's put it that way. We are all friends. You know, it is, in the end, it's such a small industry. And I know, being in that industry for I don't know, 30 years or so many decades, you know, we meet at trade shows, and then of course we all talk, and we have similar problems. You know, back in the days when I was doing real tube amps, is like the question, where do we get the best tubes from? Hey, are you using JJ tubes, and have you heard about the quality from China and stuff like that? And then I even get asked by other brands if I could sell them my knobs, because they like the knobs and stuff. And of course we share knowledge on a certain level. I mean, we don't tell the total secrets, but you know, after NAMM show, I visited Dave Friedman in his shop, simply spent an afternoon with him talking about everything, live, amps, and in general. And I know, you know, the ref guys. I know, you know, you've seen the episode with all the other amp manufacturers just on that particular event. But you know, on trade shows, you meet the guys in the lobby, and then you know, we have problems about speaker suppliers. Sometimes we have the same business partners, and yeah. You know, I believe I try to do my thing, and I try to be so different from everybody else there, so I'm not stepping on their toes in a way. I do my thing, and if you like my thing, I try to be as different as possible, just to be, you know, in nobody's way. I don't want to grab their business. I just want to do my thing. That's all. I have a lot of respect for them, and it's always good to talk to them, and it's so great seeing them, and it's a family. If I go to all the trade shows in the US and elsewhere, it's like killer. It's you know, the first guy that you meet when you come into such a show is like, hey, blah blah blah. And you know, if it's a musician or if it's somebody from a amp manufacturing brand, it's all cool. So I have a total different subject for today, and I announced this as being my travel board. And Travel Light is some stuff that I'm doing with BluGuitar and why I design the amps the way I design them. So let's get the BluBOX out of the pedalboard, and I hope the cables are long enough. Yep. So set and forget. So now this was my simplest setup possible on this little travel board. And that board is the size, when I put this into my padded cover here, that it's allowed to take on an airplane. Okay, let's get the junk out of this. And so here is a nice little wah-wah pedal. So I have that in front of everything. Let's see if we have power. There is some power. So next would be I need a chord to have my guitar. Oh man. So this is about signal flow. Guitar goes into wah, wah out goes into amp input. And this should work when it's okay. There's a nice little wah. Okay, what else do I want? I sometimes use other overdrive pedals, or maybe try this phaser here. And then I need power. I need, I mean, this is not the most beautiful pedalboard when I finished, but just to show you how I do things here. And have a phaser. Ah. So I have another effect, and then I might want a overdrive. What overdrive here is one of my golden brownies. Do we have more patch cables? Yeah, there's a patch cable. Now comes the magic question. Shall I use that in front of the phaser or after the phaser? Well, the answer is now we have to watch the signal path. And there's a couple of things that have been proven to work a little bit better than others. Generally, you can do whatever you like. You know, pedals are fun. They are colorful and you can try anything, and anything that sounds crazy enough to be used, it's usable. But what I'm doing next is I simply put that thing in front of That's the one sound. Let's try the other way. I will simply have this go first into the phaser and then get the phaser into the overdrive and then get the overdrive out into the amp. And this is sorry, that's a different tone. So, order about effects. We do have a little graphic prepared to show you typical stuff. Maybe we show you the one that is the one without the effects loop first. That's the classic situation from back in the days where where guitar amps didn't have an effects loop. Back in the days, everything was guitar, pedals, 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 amplifier input. And this is what it was. And the general idea is you go with something like a wah-wah and a filter and maybe a compressor into a booster and then into a light overdrive and then into a distortion first. So you kind of, you know, boosting a signal into an overdrive is something different than having an overdriven signal boosted. And if you want to create tone, and this is what you do with pedals, you have, you do the more dramatic pedals like after the more subtle pedals. So this is about the order. And so, yeah, simply look at this pedal board and on this little graphic that we've done to get the idea how you should use the order of pedals on your pedal board. And of course you can try a different way, but you will find out some of the stuff sounds really shitty, and of course it's noisy and stuff as well. Talking about another thing with pedal boards and noise is power supply. If you have something like this here, that's a daisy chain coming from one output, sometimes it's a nightmare. It doesn't work. It's like it starts to squeal and all that stuff. And so when you have this unwanted noise, you better go back and analyze where it's coming from. And the trick that I'm doing is I have a simple old battery, 9-volt battery block connected with a clip and with one of those plugs. And I go back to battery. So I can disconnect it from the power supply, put in the battery, and then can isolate the problem. You know, you try this, and then of course you have to build up your pedal board one pedal after the next and the next. And then the moment where you face a problem, you know, oh, something is wrong here. And the way how to get this problem solved is with a decent power supply that has like DC-DC coupling, which is separated outputs for each outlet. And that way you can isolate the power from the pedals from each other, because there will be kind of crazy ground loops and shit going on. Pedal boards get really complex the more you use, the more pedals you use. And the worst thing is if you have the BluBOX on your pedal board and pedals that are in front of the amp and use the same power supply, because then with this one power supply you make a loop from the input to the output. That's the hardest thing ever, and that sounds no good. So please use a separate outlet on a power supply for the BluBOX that is post the amp and all the sensitive stuff in front of the amp, like this one, or there are some beautiful power supplies out there. But the message is be very careful with power supply, because this is where some unwanted tones, noises and effects can come from. I will show you in further episodes more about my beloved pedals, but this is simply what you can do on a pedal board. We have another graphic that shows you a typical setup with effects that are in a setup. Some of the effects are in front of the amp and some are in the effects loop. And my delay in this case and the reverb that comes from the amp is kind of post the preamps. It's kind of in the effects loop. And that's a way cleaner tone compared to when everything is in front of the amp. But there's a beauty of both ways. I wouldn't say one way is shit and the other one is best. That's bullshit. No, there's two ways and they are simply sound different, and this is what you like or what you have to find out which way you like better. You will find time-based effects like reverb, delay, and maybe even something like chorus in the effects loop. And then you have more of the overdrive pedal and boost pedals for sure, and wah-wah pedals in front of the amplifier. So that's a basic rule. And some of the pedals you can choose if you like the chorus in the effects loop or in front of the input. It sounds different if you have like a chorus signal distorted or slightly overdriven and compressed from the amp versus a already processed sound with all the overtones chorused. And that's a matter of taste, and it's all good. It's just different options. And here's another little thing I wanted to share with you. Oops, let's see. So here's my little, what is it, trio of pedals. And I made my own connector plugs here. Very simple, of having angled plugs hard soldered to each other, but I choose, you know, the big ones from, what's the company called? Switchcraft. Yeah, they're expensive, but they are most reliable. There are cheaper ones that I got from other, that you can buy. I think this is again pretty good, but I have another thing, and they are just mechanically bullshit. If you hit your pedals with the foot and then there's mechanical stress, if the plugs are shit, either they are flexible like this, you know, the cheapo stuff works when it's flexible, but if it's something like this, go and get the real deal, or build it like I do it myself. Simply have two angled plugs and, you know, solder them together side by side. Okay, so these are a few little hints on my little treble board. And the concept of my treble board is I want to be free. If I use simply the amp and the extra foot switch, or not even, sometimes I just get the foot switch off and put another pedal there. Sometimes I have a bunch of pedals here, and sometimes I have like nothing. So this is my flexible treble pedal that I can modify to what I need. And here, sometimes I have even two of these delays, and one, I'm a delay nerd, one then is in front of the amp and the other one is in the effects loop. So anyhow, too many choices. And now comes a very, where's the stand? Interesting thing for traveling. How do I travel with my travel guitar, which is that vintage guitar that I use a lot when I fly. My original 61 Strat then stays home, and this guitar will actually fit into this bag with the pedal board and some clothes. And this is what I do. Let me show you what I'm actually doing. Get the strap off. So here's a guitar, and now I put this in. I put this for transportation. First thing is I lock the strings with a couple. Next thing is I disassemble the neck. And you will see this is a perfect travel guitar. There is no such a thing. I just have to hold that a little bit with my knee. As you can see, this has been beaten up, but it's a great guitar. And here Yips. This is the guitar, and I hold both things, and here is two pieces that I can now move and put them in my bag. So, and the beauty of that is the strings are still in place. Okay? So, I can move this and have some socks and some t-shirts, and when I arrive, I can simply come back and put the thing back together again. Like, oops. Oh, now I messed up all the strings. Which string is going where? I think I fucked it this way. So the order of strings is also very important. Spaghetti. Aha. So see, this is, it looks like, oh my God. So let's see how we can get this guitar back together. Simply put the neck in, then I turn the whole thing around. Now, next time I take an electrical screwdriver. Maybe we can show my travel back with that guitar in the meantime, but if not, it takes only a few seconds and this guitar is ready to play. Yep. Next is get the capo off, plug it back in, and check the tuning. So, who needs a travel guitar if you have a Strat? And I've done this many times. So, very easy thing to do. And I have another guitar, a blue guitar with a white, you know, one of those. Where is it? Here, one of those. It's actually not this one, but it's the one that I just recently gave to Jennifer Batten. And what I did is I modified the screws. So the Phillips cross is slightly extended just in one direction, so I can use coins. I have like a cent piece or whatever, a dime in the US, and I don't have to use a screwdriver. Of course, it takes a little bit longer, but that's all it takes. Modify the screws and you have a guitar you can travel with, and it takes a few minutes only, and that's all you fucking need for traveling. So another little plus on the good old Strat. Well, I think that's enough information for today. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. And yeah, if you do have more questions and comments, please let us know by writing to the YouTube at BluGuitar.com. And of course, subscribe to our channel. We have more to come in the next episodes. And of course, we try to interact. And if you have some stuff that you want to know about, let us know. We will investigate, take care. And don't forget to hit the bell, the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel. Hope to see you soon. And take it easy. Bye-bye.